there, right? So how many farm workers can they feasibly serve if they have the highest proportion of patients who are uninsured? So that's one reason, and I'm sure you guys have lots of other reasons that you can think of how that would be important using data in planning programs. So now I'm going to jump to our website. We have several information resources that you guys can use, and we've been working hard on putting up some really user-friendly maps. And let me show you guys some of these. So now we have maps up of our population estimates. So we have estimates of the number of crop production workers that's available, and you can hover over your county and you can see how many farm workers that are working in crops we think are in that county. And we base this on a couple of different data sources, and you can read about it on our website. But you can zoom in to a certain area if you want to take a closer look. So this is the Washington and Oregon area. So in Yakima County in Washington, we think there's about 65,000 farm workers there. And this can be really useful information when you're planning outreach programs. We also have animal workers up now, and we just put this up maybe a week or two ago. And it's interesting because the distribution of animal workers is really different. So that's kind of another interesting piece. We have a lot more in Texas, Florida, and Michigan, and places like that. The other thing that I want to show you, and that we will work on today, and that will build a similar map, is our map of H2A workers. So this map uses the same data set that I sent you guys before the webinar. And this is a map of all of the H2A guest workers that were certified to work in the United States in 2014. And it has their locations, and then it has all of their different kinds of jobs that they did. So this is kind of neat. So down here we have their different job titles. And so if I want to see all the workers that were employed to work in grain production, I can click on this, and then I can see that over here in the Midwest, this is where most of the H2A workers who are working in grain were employed in 2014. And I could do the same thing with animal workers. I can see there's a lot more in the West. Christmas tree workers were pretty much only in North Carolina. So those are a couple of tools for you guys, and you guys will learn how to do this on your own. Can everybody hear me? I see that the audio is gone. Okay, thanks. Audio looks good. Yeah, let us know, and feel free to type any questions in the chat box. Just don't be afraid to use the chat box. Okay, so those are a few things, and then we also have fact sheets. We have 17 different fact sheets now that we're regularly updating, and those are really great information resources. And then now we have an open access data page where we're putting links to data sets specifically about farm workers. So data from the Occupational and Safety Health Administration, data from the National Agricultural Workers Survey, and a whole bunch of different things, and we're adding to it pretty frequently. Okay. All right. Oh, I do see that Tom had a question about aggregating county data to the state level on the maps, and that's a really good question. So if you wanted to just look at your state and get an idea of what's going on in your state, then I'll show you a way we can add a filter, and this is what we did with the H2A workers. I don't think we've done it yet with the population estimation, but you can filter it out so it'll only show your state. Let me go here real quick. So down here, and you guys will learn how to do this in a minute, we have a whole list of states. I can uncheck them all and then just check the state that I want. So if I just want Georgia, it'll sort of recalibrate the size of the circles, which is based on the number of workers that are in each place. And so now I can see that where the concentration of workers just in Georgia is. And we can see that's down here in the south. Let me see, we have another question here that I'd like to read. So Carol, we do base our estimates mostly on the Census of Agriculture, and there's a document on the website that goes through how we come up with those calculations, and I would encourage you to look at that. And I don't think any of this data is on the American Fact Finder. That's another question from the audience. This is pretty unique data set, so I don't believe it's on there. Okay. So now I hope you all got the data set with the H2A workers. And it's a really interesting, it has some really interesting pieces of information in it that we'll see. So one of the things to think about before you build any kind of data tool or map or any visualization of data, it's really important to think about the user that's going to be using your data tool and interacting with your data tool. So it's helpful, and a lot of web developers do this, and other sort of techie people, they think about the user story, and they sort of imagine a story of someone who's going to use this tool and what they're going to do with it. So our user story that we're going to dream up today is that we're a director of a migrant health program, and we're getting ready to plan our mobile clinics for the next year, and we need to know where and when farm workers will be in our area. And we're going to say that we're in North Carolina, and there's a lot of H2A workers in our area. So those are that's the most important population that we have in our area. So we want to know where, and we want to know when. Okay. So the first step, you always want to download your data and see what's in it and see what you can actually do with it. So in our H2A data, we have information like when the workers were certified to begin working, when they have to stop working, how much they're paid, you know, how often they're paid, if they're paid monthly or biweekly. So we want to look at all that information and what's most useful. So for us in our user story, we want to know when they're working, when they're going to be arriving in our area, and then where they're going to be located. The other thing to look at would be how many records are there. So I think we have, somebody tell me, I think we have, it's a pretty big data set. There's a lot of H2A workers in the United States, but we would want to look and see about that, because it can make making a map more or less difficult if we have a lot of records. The other thing we want to look at when we're talking about maps is how are the locations recorded. So we want to know, like, is the address, city, and state all lumped in one column? Are they split up? This will make a big difference in how easy it is to map it. So we want each of those data points to be in a separate column. Okay, good. So over 9,000 records we have in our data set, so kind of medium sized. Okay, so step 2. Okay, this thing is very pokey. All right, so we want to be minimal. We're going to use our whole data set, but if you wanted to only look at data for Texas, then you can just pull out the data for Texas, you could filter it, and then add it to a new spreadsheet. And this will save time on uploading the data, and it'll help make things go a little smoother, especially if you're using an older computer or you know, a slightly less powerful computer. The other thing too that's so important, and that's really most of the battle, is making sure that the data is clean. And so we purposefully left a few errors in here, but it kind of demonstrates how hard it is to keep data clean. So we went ahead and added latitude and longitude to all the locations to make it easier to map, but a few of them are incorrect, and so maybe you guys can find those later. But it's really important to look at the data set, and if there's lots of things like misspelled names or missing entries, you want to go ahead and clean it up beforehand. And the link to the data set was in the instructions, in case any of you guys missed that. There's another question about what tool we use to geocode the data, and that I will send you the link, Michael, and I can send everyone else the link. It's a little bit advanced, but it's a really cool tool that works within a Google spreadsheet. So I'll send that to you guys at the end of the presentation. So you don't have to do it by hand. I know people who have done that, and it takes a long time. All right. So now we're going to look at how to actually use our data. And all right, so if you guys were able to download and open Tableau Public, it's a free software. I know some of you are probably on work computers that have administrative privileges, but you'll still be able to follow along and kind of get an idea of what we're doing, and you can always refer back to the slides if you're able to download it later on your own computer or on a different computer. And I think they just updated the software actually a few days ago, so your software might look slightly different than mine, but overall it's pretty much the same. Okay, so I'm going to exit out here, and I'm going to open up Tableau, make it a little bit smaller. Okay. All right, let me get it ready. So in the beginning, we're going to connect to and load our data. And so here we have our H2A data that we're going to go ahead and load. If you guys have it all saved. And I'll try to go slow. If I'm going too fast, just let me know, because I really want you guys to be able to follow along. And this free version of Tableau lets you upload 3 different kinds of files. So you can upload a database that's built in Microsoft Access. You can upload an Excel file, or you can upload a text file. Okay. So now you should have something that looks like this once you load it all up, and you can see all of the columns, and it'll show you a little bit of the data. And you can hide fields if you need to, but we're going to go ahead and leave all of ours open, and then we'll just click Go to Worksheet right here. All right, so the first thing, we're going to make 2 different kinds of visualizations because we want to know not only where the workers are going to be located, but when they're coming. So in here, we have these columns over here. And so we have our latitude, geo-latitude is the column, and then geo-longitude. And those are the columns we're going to use to make a map. So you can pull the longitude over to this column shelf, which is up here. And then we can pull the latitude up here to the row shelf. And if it made a graph instead of a map, you just click this show me thing, this box right here, and then you click on the map. So what it does, Tableau by default always sort of combines all of the data, and we don't want it to combine it. We want to see each point on the map. So we'll go up here to analysis, and where it says aggregate measures, we'll unclick it. So now it should show all the maps, or all the points on the map. But it looks kind of ugly, right? So we want to do some other things with it. So we want to, let's say we want the circles to be the size, to be bigger or smaller based on how many workers are in that area. So over here we have number of workers certified. And we're going to pull that over here where it says size. And then it looks a little small, so I'll go ahead and click on it, and I'll increase the size a little bit. So now we can see that they're larger. And then we can make it look, we can change the look of it by clicking on color. And since a lot of them are in the same location, we might want to make the circles a little bit transparent. Okay, so now we need to have useful information in this pop-up, because right now all we see is the number of workers that were certified and the latitude and longitude, but that's not really very useful information. So let's say we want to know the employer name. So we'll go over here and drag employer name over to this box called tooltip. We'll drag their job title, unit of pay, rate of pay, and the number of hours they worked. So now we know a lot more when we hover over a spot. We know a lot more about what's going on in that location. And if we want to change it, we can click on the box called tooltip over here and then get rid of these. So we don't need the latitude and longitude. So we can change it that way. So now we know that over here there was sheep herders, and that there was 114 of them certified to work in this area, and they were going to work 40 hours a week and be paid $750 a month. Since we're focused on North Carolina, we'll go over here to the East Coast. And it's good to zoom in to the area that you're interested in because sometimes the size will be too small for that area. So now we can see a little more clearly what's going on over here. Okay, so what if we want to be able to filter it out so that it'll sort of recalibrate the circle size? So we add this state over here to this filter shelf. And we want to check them all and click OK. And then we click on the state and we say show quick filter. And it should be, if we get rid of this map, so it should be over here. So these filters come out to this really long list, but we can change that. Let me see. So we click on this little arrow and let's say we want just a drop-down list. So now it won't take up so much space. So now people can filter it out and just look at the area that they're interested in. And so we can see here where all the H2A workers were certified to work in North Carolina. And same thing, if we want to change, or if we want to be able to filter by their job title, we could add that as well. And go ahead and add it as a quick filter. Okay. I'm going to pause for a minute. Are there any questions right now? Feel free to type them in the chat box. Okay, so that's the basics of how we're going to make a map. So next, so this is the sheet. This is where you build your tool, is in this sheet. This is a sheet down here, if you can see it. Let me get out my little spotlight. This is a sheet right here with the graph on it. Now we're going to build a dashboard, which is this little grid looking icon down here. And the dashboard is really where you can format everything so that it'll show up the way you want it, because if you share something as a sheet, it might show up in different sizes and it doesn't stay as clean. So we'll go over here and we'll drag our new map right here, and it'll give us these filters, and it'll also give us a legend for the circles. I'm going to get rid of that. So now if you want them to be on top of the map, you click on the filter and you check the floating box. So we'll make both of ours floating. Let me see, it looks like Amy has a question. She says, where would we get our own data set from? Well, Amy, I think it depends on what kind of information you're interested in. We do have a few links on our website under the open access data page in our website, and that has some places to get started, but it's really going to kind of depend on what information you're interested in. Okay, so this is our dashboard, and we can format our dashboard for a certain size over here. So down here in this box where it says dashboard, I'm going to go ahead and format mine for a laptop so that it'll remain this size. And if I need to change the title, I can go down here and right click on the sheet and I can give it a new name. So I can say H2A worker map. Okay. And then it shows up over here. The title of my map has changed over here. Okay. All right, so now let's do a timeline, because we also want to know when the workers are going to be arriving. Let me see here. Okay. So over here we have a certification begin date. And I'm not sure, we've tried to limit how big the file was for you guys, so I'm not sure if this is in here, but I can definitely send it to you if the begin date isn't in here. So we'll go ahead and add the certification date, and I want to do it by week. So I click on this arrow and I go down to the week number, and I want it to graph it by the number of workers that are certified. So here we can see that nationally, the peak arrival of H2A workers is in May, or at least for 2014 it was in mid-May. And again, since I'm interested in North Carolina, I will, let me see here. filter it by state. So we'll go ahead and check all. And we'll show the quick filter. And if we wanted to change it up by job title too, we go ahead and add that as a filter as well. Okay. And let's name this one timeline. And again, we're going to go through the same process of adding it to a dashboard. We'll make them floating to save some room. And you can also, I should point out right now, down here you can change where it's starting from by right-clicking on this box that says week of certification begin date, and we can click edit the access, and we can change where it's going to start from. So since this information is from 2014, let me see. Well, it's not letting me do it by hand. But since it's from 2014, we'll go ahead and start at January 1st, 2014. And so, oh, it must be the fiscal year. So let's go ahead and change that back from, say, October. Okay. So now we can see that it brings it up a little bit closer in. Okay. So it changes automatically in our dashboard. And we'll put it all together in a nice user-friendly format here. There's another question though I want to read. So an audience member is asking, is there a map option for just US states and territories with insets for Alaska and Hawaii? I haven't found this yet to where it shows Alaska and Hawaii a little bit closer to the continental US, but it may be possible. And since they just updated their software, I know they did a lot of things to the mapping features specifically, so there might be a new feature now that would allow you to do that, to focus on just the US. And we can in here, if we want to change where it's focused, we can always zoom in using this square tool from the arrows, or we can draw a circle, so we can zoom in a little bit closer. But Alaska and Hawaii are a little bit tricky. Okay. So this last icon down here, this is called a story, and this is really nice for putting things together if you have several different, maps or visualizations that you want to combine. It's a really good tool for that. So what you do, you have your story, and it works just like a dashboard. So you can we'll drag our dashboards over here. So the first one I want to show up is this map, and I'll go ahead and add a title. So I'll say map of H2A workers. Okay, so I have my H2A worker map, and then I want to add my timeline. So I'll drag my timeline over here, and I'll say begin date for H2A workers. Okay. And we'll give it a title. We'll just have H2A 2014, and we can go in here and format how we want it to look. You can change it to have a darker background or a lighter background, all up here in format. So you click Format Story, and you can change the shading to any color you want. You can change the font based on how you want it to look. Okay. Let's go ahead and filter this one out to just North Carolina. And let's make sure this one is formatted like a laptop. Okay. So we can see that North Carolina has a couple of different peaks here. So early May, April, and also in the fall, there's another peak of when the H2A workers arrive. And this would be really good information, right, to know when to plan our mobile clinics and when to do outreach. So something interesting, I was looking the other day, Idaho seems to have two different peaks. So they have one early in the spring and then they have another one in late fall. So all this information could be really useful information if we're trying to plan where to reach our farm workers, where to reach the H2A workers, and then when to reach them. So in North Carolina, we might want to stick to the center of the state, and then we want to plan on seeing a lot of farm workers in the early spring between March and September. Okay. So now I wanted to leave a lot of time for you guys to ask questions about what this software can do. I really like it because it is free and there's lots of mapping tools that you can use, but not very many of them are this powerful and very few of them let you create other kinds of information and other kinds of visualizations with the data. So we have one question, could you combine the location and the time data to create an animated map showing change over time? This was a feature that I really wanted them to have, and there is some basic things that they did, but a lot of people were actually complaining about this because they had it to where you could set it up so that you could scroll through several images. So if you wanted to have the spots on the map change by week, you would have to sort of scroll through the images by hand. And I know that this is something they were working on. So about 2 months ago I checked in on this and they still couldn't do it, but it might be possible now. Okay, so something else that's kind of neat is if we wanted to look at the timeline and look at when the different kinds of H2A workers are going to arrive, we could take the job title and move it over to the box called color, and then it'll give me all kinds of different colors for when all the different workers arrive. And because this data set really, there was tons and tons of different kinds of jobs that employers recorded. So something we did on our H2A map was group them all together. So that is, let me see here. So we could sort them out, and you can do this in different ways, but you can sort them and group them together within Tableau. So let me see, we have a couple more questions here. So how did we clean the Department of Labor H2A data, keeping in mind duplicate entries? Well, one thing we did was we filtered, so we first filtered out all the applications that were denied or that weren't recertified. And then there was several employers that had multiple applications. And so we had to either combine them or get rid of just the duplicate entries. And most of them were pretty easy to tell because they were denied and then they later reapplied and later got recertified. So filtering out the ones that were denials helped keep those out. Somebody else asked, do you know who is developing their mapping feature? Do you mind telling me which mapping feature? Is it Tableau? The biggest thing with the H2A data that was a problem was a lot of the employers they act as an association, and this is especially true in North Carolina. So some of these bigger ones, this is the North Carolina Growers Association, and so as an association they employed over 1,000 workers, and we don't really know, so they're probably working on several different farms, but we don't really know exactly which farms they're working on. So it's one of the limitations of this data set. So what are the various ways that Tableau, the free version, lets you share your visualizations? That's another question. That's a great question. So when we're all done with everything and we think it looks good and we're ready to share the story, we go up here to File, and we're going to save it to Tableau Public, and it's going to ask you for a login. And you'll type the login, and it's going to allow you to either share that as a link. It's going to live on Tableau servers, so it'll always be online, and you can always access it. And so you can either share the link to the map. I think I have an example up here right now. So this is a profile. It gives you a profile, and then it puts all your maps in one place. Here's our little story that we did. So it puts it all in one place, and then over here you can share it. So you can either share the link or you can embed it in your website with this little bit of embed code. And then you can also tweet about it or share it on Facebook. And so this is, we've now published the map and it's public, and we could share it with whoever we want to. And then it gives you some basic information about what data is in there and what kind of information we use to make those maps. And then, like I said before, it puts it all together in a profile. So it is, we have another good question here. It is publicly accessible, and it's not, it can't really be found on a search engine since it's all in their server, so it's not easy to find unless you put it on your own website, and then you could find it on a search engine. And you cannot, with the free version, you cannot make maps private. But if somebody is looking at it, they're not going to be able to access your data set specifically. They'll just see whatever you decided to include on the visualization. They won't be able to download the actual data. Okay. All right, you guys. So there was one more thing I wanted to show you guys. Let me see here. So something else that's kind of neat that you can customize over here. Everything can really be changed a lot so it can match the design of your website or any kind of graphic that you're working on. And this Tableau I think is really good for building infographics as well. So if you wanted to just create an image to save onto, you know, some larger report or something like that, you could use it for this. And so you can change, let me go back over here. You can change the look of it with all the colors in here. So it gives you a bunch of different color palettes that you can change it with. Okay. Well, you guys are free to email me with any questions. Let me pull up my contact information here. And feel free to refer back to the slides, and if you have any questions, you can email me at my Gmail account. Christina, I think that's it, unless there's any more questions that have been sent to you.
Thanks, Bethany. So far, I don't have any questions. Again, you guys please utilize this email address. We will have this training available on our website. And we just, thanks for joining us this afternoon. Thanks, Bethany. That was great information, really interactive. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.